Thank you all for being here today for the Transportation Committee meeting of Wednesday, June 12th, 2019. There are a number of items on this agenda that we are going to likely take on consent, and a couple that we will continue. First, I'm going to do general public comment, and then close general public comment. Mr. Previn, you have multiple items. You can come up. You have 2 minutes for all the items you filled out, and then 1 minute for general.
Okay, thank you. It's Eric Previn from Studio City, and I have to draw attention to the irony that yesterday we were debating in City Hall whether or not to, support that guy who had relax the towing component after 5 citations. Now, I think that the council decided to not relax it, that we have to hold the line because otherwise there's no sanity in our city, I think is the argument, that people will just park anywhere or wherever. So today we have, I think, 14 different parking restrictions. That's in one day today up here that they take a little bit of time, and kudos to staff, thanks to staff for all the copious work they have to do to put together either a preferential parking district or an oversized parking district or any of the other myriad types of restrictions that we can apply to our public roadways, thereby making it almost impossible for the population that Koretz is fighting night and day to protect, which is the population of people who are desperately looking for a place to stay but can't afford any place to stay. So whereas I understand that we have to find some way to balance these two competing interests, it really seemed like do no harm, hashtag do no harm. And by the way, I'm at Eric Previn on Twitter. I just feel like we are just swimming as fast as we can, but we're running out of water. I don't understand what strategy this is. But just looking at a preferential parking district, it's just a odious opportunity to block people from parking anywhere. I mean, on the other hand, some people are trapped in their driveway. So I don't see how these are solutions other than we're just rolling out more of same. I mean, it's almost like you're just waiting until you're gone, and then the people who follow you will have to deal with this train wreck. I don't know. Am I the only one? I'm not, because you heard from, I don't know, maybe dozens of people yesterday begging you not to go this way over and over again, and then we'll be sued, and we have
Thank
to.
You. You have a minute for general public comment.
Yeah, sure. The general public comment. I love your committee, sir, because you do a great job and you recognize the staff, and that's very nice. I know you have a big recognition moment coming up. Great work. The problem is that when you have 3 committees at 1 p.m., I think the public and the law enforcement, everybody are a little baffled because you can't be everywhere at once, and you don't let people speak on items as a routine kind of effort by, I guess it's Herb Wesson, who feels that by creating a myriad hard spots to be, that's one way to, when they get to City Hall, say, we already heard from you in committee, and we didn't really hear from you in committee, so there will be no further comments. And that's Herb Wesson for Supervisor, SD2. He's running, after years of service here, penalizing Angelenos while being celebrated as a civil rights leader. So the man has a magic, and I think he just announced that you all support him, which is fantastic. So good work, and I look forward to committee meetings that are just a little bit separate so you can participate in more than one. I know it's unthinkable to participate in more than one item in a city, but that's not the way we feel, and good luck. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Previn. I've noticed in the past couple of minutes a number of people have filled out comment cards for general public comment. So I want to make sure that that's what they want to comment on and not a specific agenda item. I'm going to call out a few names. Just tell me if you're here for general public comment or a specific item. Irma Fabian and Maria Pintor. Rodi Garcia, Maria Juarez, Brenda Valdivia. Any of you here?
She's speaking for transportation.
Are they speaking on any particular item?
Yes, what item on transportation?
On scooters. Okay, all right. I will get to that one then. All right, so that will close general public comment. Colleagues, I am going to recommend that we move on consent items 3 through 13, 15, 17, and 19 through 21.
19 through 21?
Yeah.
Mr. Chair,
Yep.
I'd like to ask that we call 19 and 20 special.
Okay. Got a long agenda. And then I'm going to recommend that we continue item 14. And with the consent of Mr. Cedillo and the Council President's office, we are going to continue item 26, which is the CD1 dockless item. So that item will not be heard today. So if you are here on items 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13, 15, 17, or 21, those items are being approved. If you are here on items 14 or 26, those items will not be heard today. So if you're here on the dockless item in Mr. Cedillo's district, that item is being continued. Okay. So that will bring us to item number 1, which is the General Manager's Report.
Item number 1.
You do yours first.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Today, as we do at least once a month, the Department of Transportation wants to recognize some of our outstanding performers at LADOT. And we appreciate the opportunity to recognize people that really make LADOT a great place to work. So first, I'm going to recognize the following individuals from Project Delivery and Operations. So please stand when I say your name. First, Kaylin Pell, Transportation Engineering Associate 2. Recently, Kaylin Pell collaborated with 11 local universities to identify upcoming career fairs at which to stage LADOT's recruitment efforts. She assembled and led a team of 20 to attend student career fairs. In addition, she created a database of resumes for identifying exceptional candidates, ensuring the exemplary quality of the department's future workforce. Kaylin originally came to LADOT in 2016, designing over 100 traffic signal timing charts per year in Council Districts 9 and 10 before transferring to the Metro Development Review Division. Thanks, Kaylin. Next up, Lori Simmons, Senior Administrative Clerk. As part of the department's recruitment efforts, Senior Admin Clerk Lori organized interviews at 11 college campuses and worked with the career centers from each school to schedule student interviews, contact applicants, and coordinate online writing exercises for everyone. Lori came to LADOT in 2000, and for the past 5 years has worked in the Western District office. In the course of performing her work, just in 2018, Lori closed out over 900 constituents' requests, the third most of all district staff. Next up, Joan Shu, Transportation Engineering Associate 2. Joan Shu has recently assumed management of the DOT Buddies program, a mentorship program for new engineers at LADOT. Under Joan's leadership, the program was rebooted with a team of 22 mentors matched with 19 new engineers. The goal of the Buddies program is to aid in the integration of new engineers and help them succeed in their career with LADOT. Mentors also assist their proteges in the process of licensing examination and promotion preparation. Joan joined the department in 2016, where she worked in the signal design section, designing traffic signals. Now she's transferred to the Central District Office, where she works with Council District 1 and its constituents. Thank you, Joan. Oh, sorry, Joanne. Sorry, Joanne. Last but not least, she's not here today, but I just want to give a shout out to Cydia Reese, Senior Management Analyst 2. Cydia has been with LADOT for 2 short years, but she has quickly become the beating heart of almost everything we do to make the department a great place to work, and we will make sure that we celebrate her when she's back. Cydia is instrumental in our success, and we're really glad to celebrate her today. Okay, so this brings us to parking enforcement and traffic control. The following individuals are being recognized for reflecting the values and goals of the city and LADOT. First up, Sergeant Tracy Floyd, Senior Traffic Supervisor 1. The city hired Sergeant Tracy Floyd in 1988 as a traffic officer 2, and since her promotion to the rank of sergeant, she's been instrumental in developing peer cohesiveness training and displaying leadership guidance. She is recognized as a coordinator with council offices to resolve parking enforcement-related issues and developed a strong professional relationship with council deputies and their constituents. We commend Sergeant Floyd for her consistent dedication to duty and providing outstanding service to the city of Los Angeles. Thank you, Sergeant Floyd. And last on the list, but first in our hearts, Sergeant Noey Torres. In January 2000, Sergeant Torres was hired by the City of LA as a traffic officer 2. Since promoted to sergeant, he continues to demonstrate the positive attributes of effective leadership and professionalism. He is currently the office coordinator for the Hollywood area's Unified Homeless Resource Center and a contact coordinator with the community and council offices. Sergeant Noey Torres is hereby commended for a job well done. And that completes our recognition.
Thank you. We have one more employee we're going to recognize, and I'm going to start with Mr. Koretz. Yeah.
So why don't we have Mo come up to the dais? Well, Mo, I'm so glad to have a chance to participate in your send-off, and no traffic jam could have kept me away, although fortunately I just had to come up the elevator, so it was easy. I know that my staff and I have worked with you on hundreds and hundreds of issues over the years since you've been in the Western District, and for my staff it was a labor of love to help put together this resolution with the help of your department. I hope that you'll find an appropriate place in your home to display it, to remind you of the more pleasant interactions that you've had with the council office and constituents. Over the years, my office has expressed a lot of fondness for you and the chance to work with you. And they have all told me that it makes them particularly sad to see you retire. And constituents have told me that too, as we've appeared installing four-way stops and such when they've been stunned to hear that you were leaving and very disappointed. Because you've been an incredible person in that department, someone that always finds a way to, yes, or at least always attempts to do so and really gets things done. And it may not have always been fun for you, but working with you has always been collaborative and easy for all of us. So we think you've earned the time to pump the brakes and roll to a stop and look back through your rearview mirror at the...
Just don't idle.
Yeah. Even from you, I get shit over the idling. I didn't expect that. But you've not only helped to make traffic better, but to make the city safer, and you have worked to say yes anytime you can, and on the rare occasions when you've had to say no, you've done it with great understanding and made sure that constituents understood why, and then came up with alternatives that were workable and solved the problems. I think you are the absolute role model for what a city staff person should be and how they should approach their job. And so on behalf of myself and my staff and everybody else who knows you and has ever worked with you, as you travel down life's highway, we wish you a good trip with smooth roads, great scenery, and good company along the way. And thank you for everything you've done for the city.
Thank you.
So I'm going to double down on that. This was a day I was hoping would not come. You have threatened or promised, depending on your perspective, our perspective or your own, that you were going to retire several times, and it got extended, and we were all very grateful for that. I joined Mr. Koretz in sharing the love and thanks of constituents on the west side, which is a particularly difficult constituency where you get a lot of incoming calls, more than other parts of the city. And you have done that with incredible grace and skill. And I have a confession to make, though. What year did you start working in Western?
It was 1998, March.
Yeah.
I think you were with...
I was, when you started working in Western, I was district director for Ruth Galanter, who was then the 6th district, which was on the west side. And you used to work with Tony Fitzgerald in my office. And at first, Tony would make requests, and the answer would come back no. And so my nickname for you originally was No. Just as my nickname for DOT was NOT for a number of years. And that changed when Salita came on board. And now it's really a... There are some council members who wish you would. Man, you have been the guy that has said yes to solutions that my constituents have been seeking consistently over the past several years. Enough so that we have a card for you signed by a number of constituents wishing you well. We've got some nice retired swag for you, including a cap and a license plate holder. But for me, most significantly, because I used to joke and call you No, I wanted to make sure I think you're the third person I've ever given one of my Yes awards to. And I actually designed this one myself. The Yes is red tape being cut by scissors.
Thank you so much.
And you have consistently been a guy who gets the city to yes and gets to solutions and works for our neighborhood. So I want to thank you, Mo, on behalf of the entire West Side.
Thank you so much.
And so, Mo, before you go, there's one public comment card on this item. Barbara?
Well, I don't want to repeat anything that's been said because everything was true and then some. And the community is sad for us, happy for you, but we want to call attention to the building of bridges that Mo did. In addition to his own world, DOT, traffic, he would come to West Traffic meetings where we had a bunch of citizens who knew pretty much nothing about traffic engineering. We had LAPD people, we had people from Metro, and Mo was an integral part of that group and problem solving around community issues. But rather than address him, because you said all the good things, I want to address all of you and say that you should let Mo recover from full-time employment. You should allow him to catch a case of selective amnesia, and then you should grab him back as a consultant because we need him.
Thank you.
That's it.
You want to say something?
We've given Mo a challenge in CD11, but you always rise to it, and I hope you've had as much fun as we have, because this doesn't have to be terrible, and you were terrific. Thank you.
Thank you.
Say a few words. First of all, thank you, Councilman Koretz, Councilman Bonin, for the kind words. I retired last week, but I already missing your staff, your wonderful staff. They're top-notch. It was a great pleasure working with them. But, you know, I owe most of these really to my staff at the Western District, so I want them to also be recognized. If you can stand up, Western District. Because without them, I really couldn't achieve this. Thank you again.
Thank you. Okay, so that takes care of item number 1. Next is item number 2.
Item number 2 is a communication from the mayor relative to the appointment of Ms. Donna Choi to the Board of Transportation Commissioners for the term ending June 30th, 2021, to fill the vacancy created by the resignation of Mr. Rudy Espinoza.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for making time for me, especially in light of all the fantastic employee recognitions that's going on. Well deserved, everyone.
Thanks. Can you just give us a little bit about who you are and why you want this gig?
Sure. Thanks for seeing me today. I'm Donna Choi. I live in Eagle Rock in the Great 14th District. And I've been serving on the East Area Planning Commission for the last 5 years. It's been an honor to do so. During that time, we've seen a lot of cases come before us that had to do with ingress and egress and parking. And I got to say, that's what people are most passionate about in the city. I think if I had a middle name to give myself, it would be Donna I Love LA Choi. So I use all forms of public transportation. I love the Metro. I'm really a fan of the roundabout on Figueroa. Always interested to see how we can make the city move better. I like road diets. I don't know if that's really popular or not. But yes, so I'm excited to have the opportunity to serve, of course, with your approval.
Excellent. Colleagues, any questions? Well, I'm delighted to recommend approval to the full council, and without objection, that will be our direction. Thank you for your willingness to serve.
My pleasure, and thank you so much for your support.
Okay, that will bring us to item number 16.
Item number 16 is a Buscaino-Blumenfield motion requesting the city attorney to prepare an ordinance to increase fines relative to parking of trailers, semi-trailers, and commercial vehicles on city streets.
And just a clarification on this, I just want to clarify for the record that the scope of this is for commercial vehicles and nothing else, correct?
It was supposed to be, but the way it's written.
Okay, so with that clarification.
Right.
Okay. All right, so seeing no objection, item 16 is approved with that clarification. That brings us to item number 18.
Item number 18 is a Huizar Rodriguez motion requesting the city attorney, with the assistance of DOT, to prepare an ordinance restricting the parking of commercial and/or construction vehicles from parking and idling for extended periods of time along Colorado Boulevard between North Figueroa Street and the eastern city boundary.
All right, and the council member from CD 14 is requesting an amendment to his original motion to add an additional moving clause that says, I further move that the Department of Transportation be directed to install appropriate parking restrictions to address construction vehicles along Colorado Boulevard between Dahlia Drive and Patrician Way, and along North Figueroa between Yosemite Drive and Shoal Canyon Road. Any questions or objections? All right, so with that amendment, that item is approved. That brings us to item number 19, called special by Mr. Koretz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And kudos to you for establishing the West Side Fast Forward initiative. I'd like to know a little bit more about the program, and I believe that these measures can and should be extended to Council District 5. Much of the western portion of the district are within the TIMP area covered by this and by the Fast Forward initiative. And if it's going to be implemented during this fiscal year, I believe there are a number of new signal and left turn phasing projects in the queue within the TIMP on our side of the line, and I'd like to have those considered for some of that funding. And I would encourage your staff to work with Jay Greenstein on my staff to sort all of this out.
Absolutely. Happy to do so. Okay. So without objection, that one is approved. Item 20, also called special by Mr. Koretz.
Item number 20 is a DOT report relative to the status of the Expo Bike Path Northvale Gap Closure Project between Overland and Motor Avenues.
Thank you, and I appreciate the report back on the Expo Bikeway Northvale Gap, which is a gap in a much longer bike lane. Happens to be in CD5, but it could have been anywhere. It's just the one piece that hasn't been completed, but it really forestalls the whole bike lane as a functional project. I know the decision to move this process forward was made back on April 30th, and I'm hoping that BOE staff can begin making offers before the July date given in the report. But I'd also like to push further on the timeline, and I see the date given for completion of right-of-way acquisition as July 2021, and the date for completion of the design is a year earlier. So I'm wondering whether we can't try to do better to complete the property acquisition and move the whole project forward at the same time, and take a year off that timeline. So I wonder if someone from the department could speak to that possibility.
Dan Mitchell, Assistant General Manager with the Department of Transportation. I don't believe we have a Bureau of Engineering representative here, but we can certainly communicate that through. I think this represents a worst-case scenario, and certainly they'll do their very best to beat that. It depends upon the negotiations.
I mean, it's certainly an awfully lengthy timeline that seems very pessimistic, and I would encourage them to complete it at the same time that we expect the design to be completed, so we can move forward and have it done hopefully a year earlier than that.
Fair enough. That would be our goal as well.
Thank you.
Okay, so that item is approved as well. And that brings us to, since there's so many speakers here for it, I'm going to take the dockless item next. So that will be item number 25. And we have a lot of public speakers, more than 30, I think. So I'll start with the public speakers. Mario Bardales, Alex Nezik, Carla Owenane, and Kyle Rowe.
And item 25 is the DOT report relative to an update of the dockless bike scooter share pilot program.
Thank you. Yeah, that was on consent. Yeah.
You want to sit here? There's a chair.
Thank you, Mary.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Please go ahead. Start by identifying yourself, please.
In the order that you announced the speakers, or in any
Just
order?
left to
Sure. Hi, esteemed council members. I am Alex Nesick with the company Clever Mobility. Thank you for allowing us to speak. So we've watched the last several months of deployment with great interest and have also attended community meetings to hear feedback from stakeholders and residents. And for the record, we applied to the pilot, but were not issued a permit due to procedural error. Without fail, the concerned residents list a lack of compliance with regulation as their primary concern, specifically as it relates to consistent violation of sidewalk riding and parking rules. For several months now, Clever has been advocating for the use of better technology to proactively manage deployed vehicles in finite geofenced areas rather than only relying on user behavior management, which has proven to be very ineffective. Despite other operators' claims that this isn't possible, we have recently demonstrated this technological capability to several cities, including LA DOT just last week and today. And I invite, I would extend an open invitation to council members to come and test ride and see our precise geofencing outside of City Hall.
Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Yes. My name is Mario Bardales. I am totally blind, and I would like to speak on behalf of all the community with people with disabilities. And our request is for this pilot plan of scooters on sidewalks or on the street, put it on hold until you have an impact study. We consider this, we are not want to be part of the pilot plan because we have many, many difficulties to have these obstacles on sidewalks. So thank you so much for reconsidering this pilot plan and put it on hold. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Carla Wane. I am a native Angelino, and I am here to represent Lime as a Community and Government Affairs Manager. Lime is proud to be one of the 8 operators serving the City of LA during this one-year pilot program. To date, nearly 1 million Angelinos, who are residents, commuters, and visitors, have taken over 4 million rides, with 40% indicating that they chose a scooter over a car trip. Over the course of the last 10 months, our team has met with over 150 stakeholders across all districts, hosted education and awareness events, and given out hundreds of helmets. We look forward to expanding on these efforts during these summer months, and we remain committed to ensuring the success of the program, being good community partners, and working to expand the transportation network in the city. We briefly want to address the My LA 311 service request data that was provided in the report. While Lime does have the largest amount of service requests across all operators, we feel that the data should also take into consideration a couple of things. One, that we're the only company deploying at our full fleet cap, and that we have deployment on the ground which predates several operators.
Thank you very much. You can submit the letter for the record if you'd like. Thank you. Next speakers, Kyle Rowe, Neri Larios, Mel Lohman, Bertha Woolridge.
Thank you, Transportation Committee, for discussing shared mobility today. My name is Kyle Rowe. I'm the head of government partnerships for SPIN. SPIN launched in shared scooters in Los Angeles after receiving our 120-day conditional permit originally, and then we've continued our operation with the one-year pilot. One thing I want to note is that SPIN did not launch prior to receiving our conditional permit. It's a commitment that we call our partnership promise. We only launch once we have permission in cities. Upon approval of our application, we quickly began working with our operations team to ensure a smooth roll of electric scooters. One of Spin's core values is scale responsibly, and our growth is based on shared goals with the city, meaning we will ensure deployment and fleet size is done in a careful and thoughtful manner. We have recently expanded to the San Fernando Valley, and we are excited to continue expanding throughout LA. The data that LADOT presented shows that Spin has the lowest number of service requests, only 2.3% of total service requests. When considering the fleet on the ground, we still have the lowest, only 7% when the average is 18. Spin takes pride in operating a responsible fleet. We do so with an all W-2 employment in our operations. And I'm out of time. I have some data here I'll leave behind.
Thank you very much. Please go ahead, ma'am.
Yes, my name is Bertha Woodridge, and I am here to represent our CPAP from Rampart Division. And I do have a lot of complaints in our meetings for the scooters in the streets, just laying all over the streets, being vandalized for a lot of different reasons and making a lot of trash. I'm here to make a request, please, to remove the scooters from Rampart Division. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please go ahead, ma'am. Yep.
My name is Natty Larios, and I'm here because of the scooter. I've been having complaint about the people with disability with wheelchairs and people, students with goes to Braille Institute Leo that cannot see. They've seen a lot of scooter that is on the floor and they bump on themselves before, and I have to help them.
Thank you very much.
And here are the pictures.
Okay. Yes.
That I took.
If the Sergeant at Arms could please. Thanks.
Melly Loman, staff for the 1st Council District. As the elected council member of the 1st District, Council Member Cedillo's responsibility is to be responsive to his constituency. His motion to exclude his district from the one-year program is in response to his constituents' concerns for their safety, welfare, and privacy, as well as the safety, welfare, and privacy of others. Councilmember Cedillo respectfully requests that the 1st District be excluded from the one-year program until an analysis and regulations have been considered. As of yet, the scooter companies have not sufficiently demonstrated acceptable safety results and safety results for riders and pedestrians who encounter scooters. The safety and welfare of Councilmember Cedillo's residents and constituents are paramount. He asks that you respect his position, grant his request, and allow him to dutifully address his constituents' concerns.
Thank you. That was actually item number 26, and right before the meeting, your office communicated to us and the council president that they'd like us to continue the item.
Yes, we understand that this is public comment.
Okay. Thank you. All right, thank you all. We have a number of other public comment cards. I can hear that there's some folks who have young kids in the back, just like they allow people with kids to get on an airplane first. I'm happy to allow folks with kids to come up to the table first. Is anybody here juggling with some child care and you want to speak early? Okay. If you do, just let me know. Next 4 speakers then are Jenny Alberts, Irma Fabian, Maria Juarez, and Rodi Garcia.
Sí. Habla primero. Habla primero. Sí, habla primero. Yo.
My name is Jenny Alberts. I am the chairman of transportation of the Pico Union Neighborhood Council, and I'm here to support the petition of Mr. Councilman Cedillo to exclude the City 1, especially the Pico Union area, from the pilot program of the scooters.
Thank you very much. Please go ahead, ma'am.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Irma Fabián.
My name is Irma
Vengo del
Fabián.
área de Pico Union, madre voluntaria,
Pico Union.
madre líder de la comunidad.
I represent the community.
El fin por el cual estoy aquí
The
es
reason
para
I'm here,
abogar la situación que
I'm here to
vivimos
defend
con las patinetas
the way we live.
que nos mantienen en
All the
las calles.
scooters are there on the streets.
Es un problema para
a problem
transitar, tanto para
to
nuestros
walk,
ancianos
for our
como para
elders
nuestros niños.
and our children.
Esos aparatos son
Those things,
destrozados en las
they're
calles.
just thrown there on the street
Es un problema
It's a
para el
problem
transporte de nuestros hijos.
for our kids walking on the
Creo que en
street,
el área de
on the
nosotros
sidewalk.
requerimos más de
We
transporte.
require more
Somos
transportation.
comunidad trabajadora.
We're a working
Vamos
community.
a trabajar y es lo que
We're
más
gonna work.
queremos. No creo necesarias las
I
patinetas.
don't think it's necessary to have the scooters on the sidewalk.
y gustaríamos que vieran otras situaciones más
So I would like
importantes
for
en
you
nuestra
to find
comunidad.
another way to
Gracias.
put them somewhere else. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please go ahead, ma'am.
Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon.
Mi nombre es Rode García.
My name is Roy Garcia.
Yo vengo representando la
I
escuela
represent the
Magnolia
school,
Elementary
Magnolia Elementary School.
una escuela de niños pequeños
There's little kids there.
donde hemos visto el problema de
We've
todas
seen the
las patinetas
problem of all the scooters there.
tiradas cerca de la
They're just
escuela,
thrown there
en las
near the
calles,
school, on the street,
cerca,
near,
y donde nuestros niños las
where
miran tiradas,
all the children see them
desarmadas,
thrown there.
ellos también quieren usarlas.
They want to use them, but they're all
Mal
destroyed.
tiradas.
They're just there.
También estoy cerca de la escuela Verendo.
I am near the school of Berendo,
Niños de escuela Verendo,
and the kids there at the
cómo hacen
school,
para usarlas.
I don't know what they do
Ellos
to use it,
las agarran.
but they grab them.
No sé si no hay control contra cómo ellos pueden dejar de
There's no
usarlas.
control for them
y
to
no
use,
dejarlas en cualquier lugar.
and for them not to put them just anywhere.
Tenemos vecindario de
We have a
personas
community,
con ruedas.
we have wheelchairs, people with
Llega
wheelchairs.
el bucecito a recogerlas.
The bus
y es muy
comes,
imposible
and
para estas personas
It's very
poder
difficult for them to
tomar,
access the bus
su bus o salir ellas de
or
su casa.
to
sus
come out of their
hogares,
homes,
porque
of their
están las
buildings,
patinetas tiradas
because they're
en el
just there thrown on the sidewalk.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Gracias.
Yep. And I had called Maria Juarez. Is Maria here? Also, next ones are Zoila Banuelos, Danny Luna, and Isa Maxkin.
To the
Buenas-
translator, can I just make an observation? Can you wait her to finish so that you can translate? Because you're translating over
Okay.
her speaking. It's hard to hear.
Okay, thank you.
Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon.
Mi nombre es María Juárez y nosotros venimos de la Hoover, la escuela de Hoover. Venimos, nosotros somos madres que luchan y también de las del scooter. Ese es peligroso para los niños que le dejan.
I come from Hoover, and it's very hard for kids to be there because the scooters are just thrown there on the sidewalk.
La dejan ahí la mitad de la calle y peligroso para que de repente agarran los niños chiquitos y no lo saben usar o mamás que tienen carriolas y no pueden pasar porque está la mitad de tirado.
And they're just throwing there on the sidewalk. It's very hard for the mothers with strollers to walk there on the sidewalk because they're just there on the sidewalk thrown.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Zoila Bañuelos. I represent my neighborhood, Pico Union Neighborhood Council. And we oppose the pilot scooter program because it's not adequate in our population. Our area is very populated, it's very density, and it's not adequate. It's not safe for the people to walk, and it might cause accidents. So we don't want them unless there is rules and regulations for the people to use them, because there is kids, 9-year-old kids using them, and it's kind of dangerous.
Thank you very much. Please go ahead, sir.
Hi, my name is Danny Luna. I live in Vista Hermosa, and I asked for you guys to resend their permitting for these companies until there's some accountability, because right now everything's just being laid about. The only accountability that they have is us as residents reporting this, and frankly, I'm getting tired of reporting them. It's like, so these numbers are actually grossly under what the reality really is. Just on my walk here, it's like I ran through broken ones, some of them blocking handicap ramps, and fire hydrants, restaurants, like even the buildings, they pay for public spaces, and these public spaces are being blocked and intruded upon by these companies that have zero accountability for safety, or its riders, or the community in itself.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Before I call up the next round of speakers, if I could just ask the audience to please take any conversations outside, especially the lobbyists, because we can hear a lot of mumbling up here and it's making it difficult to hear the speakers. So the next four speakers are Isa Maxon, Michelle Cabezes, Vernell Trainer, and Mr. Spindler.
Hello, hi. Good afternoon.
My name is Vernell Trainer. I'm a CD1 resident, and since the Poly program has launched in my community, it has provided a tremendous, easy, and eco-friendly mobility transportation for me and my neighbors. I have since driven over 500 miles just within my district. It has been my daily go-to commute. I want to add, as a daily scooter mobility rider, I follow all scooter traffic laws. I hope a ban on any district isn't passed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
Hi, I'm from District 1. My name is Michelle Cabezas. I think this is an amazing program. Not only for me and my husband use it, my older children use it as well. As you know, we have a parking issue just in District 1 alone with all the apartment buildings going up. So it's very difficult for us to move our cars for transportation, so we do choose to use scooters. I understand the Disability Act for children too. My older son is autistic, and he does use this as transportation because he does not have a driver's license. So I think this is a good opportunity for certain people with certain disabilities to be able to use this to have some type of, instead of using the bus, like some type of independency that they can actually move about the city on their own. Not only am I a user, but I am a juicer, and it is a little bit of income to bring in to my family, considering I stay home with an autistic child. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you both. Last call for Isa or Isa Maxon. Okay. Michael Kaphan, Hans Verme, Michael Lavalier, Paul Shawcat.
Okay, I can't begin.
Please start by identifying yourself.
Oh, Mike Luellier. I live downtown by USC. I can't begin to tell you how I've been empowered by these things. The ability to go at places and do things that I could never possibly do. I have greater income because of the time they save me and they pay for themselves. Before the scooters came along, I used to think I was, someday I'll get a car, which isn't the greatest option, but it's better than nothing, right? Well, no, I'm never going to get a car. It's the combination of scooters and public transit is better than cars at a tiny fraction of the cost, and the opportunities it affords me are just tremendous. Also, I ride all over the city, and I have almost never seen any of the myriad tribulations that have been described to you so far. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, council members. Thank you so much. I am Paul Shawcat. I'm a substitute teacher. I live in Koreatown. Just wanted to share a little bit of my experience. I use scooters and rideshare bicycles and scooters all the time to work. As you know, probably parking in Koreatown is really hard. So when I find a spot, I tend to stay there the whole week until street sweeping. And so I use the scooters to get to work. They really cut down on time if I had to walk. I always wear a helmet, and I always ride on the street. And I really hope that we can find a good solution. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
My name is Michael Capon. I live in District 1. I moved to Los Angeles homeless, and was able to use the money I earned through this app to establish myself to get a job, to get now full-time employment here in Hollywood. And it's been very important to me, and it's very much empowered me to become a member of this community. If people have a problem with them being on the streets, they can perhaps try picking them up. And I know that's not available for everyone, but just one idea. Also, if the vending zones, the no vending zones around Dodger Stadium, maybe just make an area like that wardened off instead of the entire district. That might be a good compromise. This is very important to me, and it's a wonderful program, and I hope that it stays and that we can find a way to work together and make it better.
Thank you very much. Please go ahead, sir.
My name is Dr. Hans Vermeij. I'm a faculty at Cal State San Marcos, which is 100 miles away. I commute using Limes and the train after witnessing a car wreck on I-5 where 2 families were killed. I Let's see. When I have tourists, family, and friends that visit from out of town, we often use limes in order to access all of the businesses in District 1 where I live. And let's see. Also live with two people that have walking trouble. They have feet that are injured, so they're mobile, but they are limited mobility, and the scooters also help them get and do grocery shopping. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next four speakers, Brenda Valdivia, Jose Luis Jimenez, Lucy McKenney, and Barbara Brody. Oh, yeah. Sergeants?
Thank you, Neri. Okay. Sergeants, can you help, please? Neri, hold on.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Hi, I'm Brenda Valdivia. I live in District 1. I strongly oppose to the scooter because I almost got run over by them because they were riding in the sidewalk. They are misplaced. Most of the time, they're in the middle of the sidewalk. They are thrown everywhere, and that's it.
Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
Hello, I'm Lucy McKenzie, and I'm here to talk about putting a ban on the scooters. Of course, like you've heard, they are extra refuge on the street. They're being vandalized. The parts are being recycled. There are individuals who are also vandalizing them and connecting wires, however they're doing so that they can become toys for their children. So I see young children riding them. And, of course, riding them on the sidewalk, not adhering to the rules. The rules that they talk about in regards to that we have to adhere to are just clicking on the actual application, and that's the only rule. There's not a lot of education being put out there so that people could understand it better. But, again, it's causing a lot of refuge on our streets, and people are riding on the sidewalk, and, of course, it causes a danger to the community members in Council District 1. Again, and I also want to say Council District 1 is doing an outstanding job for the people in the community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Mr. Jimenez, please go ahead.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Jose Jimenez, and I'm representing the Organization for the Physically Impaired, and also I'm part of the PICO Union team today, and I would like to strongly request on behalf of the visually impaired community and the physically impaired in general to consider the business plan that you have from these scooter companies, because I believe they didn't present a research prior to launch the business, and they just causing a lot of problems, especially for visually impaired, because we already have some accidents in the community, and with some of the members who already spoke over here, and we would like to strongly to request to those who have the decision, take the decision to hold the project until you, or until the companies did offer a better business plan.
Thank you very much, sir. Barbara.
Barbara Brody, CD5. This is a pilot program. The purpose of pilot programs is to gather data in order to make a good final program. And the data collection on this project needs to be augmented significantly. Emergency room statistics, impact on public health delivery. The accident issue is a huge issue. We had someone in a wheelchair knocked down on one of our streets in the West Side Neighborhood Council area already. People should not have to press charges. If there's an accident report filed, there should be data revealed so that police can follow up without having to issue a subpoena. Enforcement is important. Do we understand whether these scooters are being used to augment and do first and last mile connections, or are they replacing transit? We don't know. Finally, on behalf of my son, a long distance runner, who called me up and said, "Mother, these scooters are trying to kill me." He can't run anymore. Bad enough, he said, are the bad sidewalks, but the scooters are a terrible hazard.
Debbie Nussbaum and Tony Kalunga. Please go ahead.
I'm Debbie Nussbaum. I'm from Westwood Hills Property Owners Association. I'm the traffic chair for the group. And being close to Westwood, we saw the implementation of all the e-scooters. I do think e-scooters are a good solution for first and last mile. However, there needs to be rules and regulations. They can't be on the sidewalk where there's a lot of pedestrians. It's very dangerous. Somebody's going to get hit. People are getting hit. When people park there, and I'm using the word park very loosely, the scooters, when they're finished, they're leaving them in doorways. They're blocking the access to the crossing streets. Most residential neighborhoods only have 3-foot sidewalks, and they're all over the place. It's very dangerous, and they are poorly lit if they're being used at night. You can't see the people on the street. So a lot more has to go into this.
Thank you very much. Please, sir.
Hello, my name is Tony Kalunga, and I'm a charger for the companies, Bird specifically. I just wanted to just give my experience and let you know that since working with them, I've only been working with Bird for a couple weeks now. I worked for Line before that, but this is life-changing for me and my family. I'm not just some crackhead looking out for getting a fix, the next fix or whatever. I have a family and I have kids, and I've been struggling to make ends meet, and this allows me to struggle to work hard and provide for me and my family and my daughter. Granted, there is some issues, but I don't believe this should be a complete stop. People depend on this on both sides, riders and chargers. There are problems with parking based on what I've seen, and I've been out everywhere. There are parking problems, but based on what you hear and what there actually is total, there's not that as what you're hearing and what you see.
Thank you very much. Is there somebody here who filled out a card, a TT?
Oh, yes, that was me.
That was you filling out the other one, okay. All right, Mr. Spindler?
Yes, we're here on the mobility issue, and on behalf of Mr. Armando Herman and his nonprofit Transportation Niggers. So again, we support the item and Mr. Cedillo's ban on these horrible, horrible scooters and dickless on-demand personal mobility pilots. I mean, the last thing I want to do is be going around town driving a dickless on-demand personal mobility plan. I mean, I don't want to do that. I don't want to remain dickless. I mean, so I can't support this dickless on-demand personal mobility because I was riding a scooter over in CD12 and, you know, people started going and calling me the N-word because I'm doing a scooter. So again, I've many times we brought this issue up to you, Mr. Bonin, that white people using public transportation are being called transportation niggers. So I would add that to the motion. So thank you, Mr. Cedillo, for bringing us back at credibility.
For those of you who are unfamiliar with Mr. Spindler or with public comment at city council meetings, due to the court's requirement that we adhere to respect for the First Amendment, we are unfortunately required to allow people to come up and use speech regularly that people find offensive, hurtful, and hateful. And we apologize for that, although we are unable to prevent it, and it is sadly a regular feature of deliberations in this building. There were a number of people earlier today who filled out cards for general public comment, most of whom I believe wanted to speak on this item. Most of them are duplicative. There are 4 I've identified that I don't think already spoke. Maria Pintor, Taranig Topchian, Marcos Torres, and Mike Truitt. Please go ahead, sir.
My name is Taranik Topchin. I wanted to give some historical context to this issue. For years, LA has thrown up its hands about how to get Angelenos out of their cars. With LA's traffic increasing every year, bus ridership falling, pollution levels choking us and our kids, and global warming, we haven't seen any meaningful change. There was a moderately ambitious city plan back in 2010, I don't know if any of you were aware, about creating a bike network throughout Los Angeles. Unfortunately, the city has largely ignored this plan, and Mr. Cedillo's track record against bicycle infrastructure and street improvements and his short-sightedness, as well as some of his anti-bike colleagues, are the very reason we're having these issues and the very reason we haven't built out this network with forcing people to go on the sidewalks instead of having a safe bike lane to ride on. We've been robbed of a safe, healthy, sustainable Los Angeles, leaving us trapped in dirty, expensive cars. We have finally true 21st century mobility. Let's make them work. Instead of banning them or choking them with regulation, let's have protected bike lanes.
Thank you, sir. Please go ahead, sir.
Hi, my name is Michael Truitt. I am a producer with Lime, and I've been with Lime from, I believe, August. I do a little bird, but this program has opened many avenues for me and has opened up avenues for other people. Today, I'm glad I came here, and I heard a lot of emotional-based testimony from a lot of people here. We do have a lot of problems. There's scooters that are laying around. There's also kids, the ones that are complaining about it. Their children are the ones that are knocking the scooters over, trying to vandalize the scooters and doing all these things. Then they're not actually taking care of their children properly. They're not actually not taking care of their children. They're actually making false statements. There's problems that we have, but there's not things that we could definitely work on. I go out, and when I'm charging and I'm going out and I see the scooters, I go out and pick up the scooters. There's chargers out there that do the same. We all work for this company, and we're all independent contractors, and we all live in LA, and we all care about our city.
Thank you. Was there a Maria Pintor or Marcos Torres? Okay. I believe Irma Fabian and Rodi Garcia spoke on the previous item. Spoke already? Okay. All right. So that is all of the public comment cards for this item. If staff could come on up.
Good afternoon, Marcel Porras, Chief Sustainability Officer, LADOT. I'm going to just jump right into a quick overview of the program as it is today, and happy to answer any questions after that. All right. Okay, well, do you guys have copies of the presentation, the paper copy? Yeah, do you know?
I think so.
So we can catch up on the slides if we get there, but the one-year permit launched on March 15th. At the time, we got 3 applications submitted or approved. The remaining 5 companies, for a total of 8, were authorized and put into operation on April 15th. The program is a 1-year pilot. To date, we have over 36,000 vehicles permitted. Over 17,000 of those vehicles are located in the disadvantaged communities. I think we're seeing an increasing as companies do the rollout of their program. You're seeing the numbers of total trips per month increase. Last month, we had over 1 million rides across the city. I think that specifically to call out a couple of different numbers for council districts, I think the top rides that we're seeing in the city continue to be on the west side, with over approximately, since the program started, over 700,000, followed by Council District 5 with over 500,000 since the program started, in Council District 14 over 400,000, followed by Council District 10 with close to 200,000 rides, and Council District 1 with 140,000. Then it varies, kind of going down and descending. On average, right now, we're seeing, as of last week, 26,000 vehicles being deployed per week of the total 36,000, showing that there will be a continued increase in ridership as companies decide to hit their full permitted allowance. As I mentioned previously before, we are also tracking service requests that come in from stakeholders and constituents. To date, we have received over 3,000 service requests, and we're able to break that down by company. I think that one of the companies pointed out earlier that some of that is relational to the number of vehicles and how early companies launched, and so that's a number that we are continuing to track.
What page are you on?
I'm on the My LA through and one service requests. So after we go through the hotspots, there's a slide that says average weekly deployment.
Is that not working? Is that the issue?
I think it was on so long that it froze. I got it, Joan.
Just keep going, Marcel. We got a big agenda.
Yep. So in terms of community outreach, we've done a first phase of community outreach where we had 5 community meetings. After we last came here, we did another phase of community meetings that started in the end of May, with starting that in Van Nuys City Hall, and then also in Little Tokyo, in the Fairfax area, in the Wilshire Library in CD4, West LA. We did yesterday, and tonight we're doing one in Venice, in Abbot Kinney. I think one of the issues that continues to come up is around sidewalk riding. I think we understand that as a pilot program, I think there's a different tactics that we can take around looking at reducing sidewalk riding. One of them is around education. As we speak, we have an education campaign, like posters being printed, that we'll start seeing at bus benches and bus stops across the city. That campaign is licensed from the city of Santa Monica, who's been a leader in kind of the public education. We felt it was important to start looking at a regional message. You may have seen some of that campaign previously on Metro buses that was paid for. In addition, the companies are also continuing to advertise, as per the requirement, no sidewalk riding on their vehicles, and also using in-app technology to geofence technology. The other question is on, it's okay, Raman. Yeah. On enforcement, we're also collecting information from LAPD. To date, LAPD has issued 118 citations for sidewalk riding. The citation amount is $197. In addition, LADOT, and as part of this report, is coming and recommending a fine schedule. I think one of the things we can do education, but I think enforcement still needs to be a part of this. LAPD is doing their part to enforce sidewalk riding, but I think for the larger part of the program, LADOT needs to have the ability to levy fines on the companies, and so that is attached to the report as an appendix. In addition, we're also collecting information from LA Fire Department in regards to safety. To date, there's been over 160 incidents involving e-scooters. In response to a death in Hollywood a few months ago, we initiated some work with the Vision Zero Core team, and so we're working with LA Fire, Police Department, the Mayor's Office to look at kind of like a rapid response protocol as safety continues to be a key issue. Lastly, LAPD is also sharing information in terms of collisions with scooters, and to date, they've shared with us that there's been 62 total collisions reported. That's the broad overview of the program to date. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have a question. Can the department share the usage data with us? I guess I want a better indication as to what the usage looks like in underserved communities.
Sure. I don't, let me see here.
Was it in one of your slides?
I have some statistics. Let's see.
Does it go by communities?
We have.
All right, so get that to me then if you don't have it now.
Per council district.
The other thing I had a question about is, so LAFD knows that there's 160 incidents. Can you give me a sort of an idea of what the severity of these incidents are? And do you see a certain pattern occurring? What types of incidences are these, and do you see a pattern in terms of accidents?
I can't comment on the statistics that fire is collecting. I would suggest that we.
So I assume it's paramedics and IMTs, right?
Yes. Yeah.
But you don't see a pattern?
Just I don't have enough detailed information on the incident
Is it
information.
car versus scooter? What kind of incidences are we talking about? I guess that wasn't clear in the report, so.
I think one of the challenges from the LAPD currently and how we've discussed and how they collect information, if there is, for example, a truck that hits a scooter,
Right.
it's a vehicle-to-vehicle incident. They don't have that nuance yet in their reporting. I know that the City of Santa Monica Police Department has actually started creating a different classification for scooters to track, but currently the way LAPD tracks.
So Marcel, the reason I'm asking this is because I think we need to include these numbers in our data to help us better inform the council of our accident counts when it comes to Vision Zero. That's why I want to know. I think this is an important data for us to make sure that we're capturing those incidences, what that really means, so we can incorporate it in the data that we're collecting for Vision Zero.
Understood.
Yeah. The other question I had is, so you've implemented parking zones have you implemented parking zones outside of downtown and outside of City 11? Or is this only being piloted into different council districts?
No, so we have an online form right now that is available for folks to submit. I think we're looking at doing installations on a quarterly basis. The first batch of parking zones that we procured was for 100. We're also looking at different mechanisms for doing procurement on that. We're also looking at doing corrals as well. So like in-street parking infrastructure rather than just on the sidewalk.
Okay. And then my last question, Mr. Chair. So is the department monitoring the service requests and the compliance by geographical area? I think most of the complaints that you will hear are the fact that these scooters are being left abandoned in the middle of nowhere. And so I just want to make sure that we are capturing the service requests and that we're actually making sure they comply. And what does that look like for disadvantaged communities? Mm-hmm. I don't want to see companies respect cleanliness and so forth in some communities and not in others. So I want to figure out what that looks like.
Okay.
Mr. Clerk?
Fair enough?
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think, as you all probably know, I'm not necessarily a big fan. When this first came out, I didn't really foresee all the problems, but I consider this the anti-Vision Zero. We're trying to add as many injuries as we possibly can to the system in favor of having the access to scooters. Anecdotally, I've talked to attorneys who have a full scooter practice. Most of their clients are not injured either by scooters as a pedestrian, although that is a serious problem, or by scooters running into cars. Right now, it's mostly people on scooters being injured by the scooters. So it's people for whom the platform on which they stand snap, or the upright, whatever you call it, that attaches to the handlebars snapping, or the brakes going out. So certainly as a highest priority, I think these companies need to work on their own equipment because, I mean, I would love to completely get rid of these, and that is my goal. But until we do that, what we really need to do, and we may never do that, so in fairness, what we need to do is make this as safe as possible if we are going to use them. And these companies must all look at their own technologies and produce a product that actually is safe for their own riders. Unfortunately, I think there is no safe place to ride them. We dealt with the lack of helmet usage by having a law passed at the state level saying you don't need helmets. That certainly didn't improve anyone's safety. It just made it more convenient. I think it's unsafe for the pedestrians when riders ride on the sidewalks, but I think it's unsafe for the scooter riders when they ride them in the streets. So the only place that is remotely safe is in bike lanes, and it will be many years before we've implemented a completely robust system. And it may never get there because some streets just don't have the room for a bike lane to be added. So I certainly support Mr. Cedillo's efforts when there are districts in which council members are not seeking to have these and constituents are overwhelmingly in opposition. I think a pilot program is a pilot program. It usually means, in theory, you do it in a portion of a whole. And so if there are a couple council members that would like to see them removed and popular demand from their constituents, I think we should have the ability to do that. And I personally have had to dive out of the way of scooter riders a few times. Ironically, once while on camera doing a story about how dangerous I found the scooters to be, and I then had to dive out of the way of a scooter right on the spot.
It wasn't David Hirsch riding the scooter at you, right?
No, I'm not sure if he could do that or not. I wouldn't want to see it. But no, I've had to dive out of the way on Beverly Boulevard behind illegally sold furniture, fortunately placed there so I would have a place to protect myself. I also have some doubt about how many people actually use these in place of cars. I think there are just as many people, based on how short the average trip is, that use them in place of feet. So instead of having to walk a quarter mile, they'll grab a scooter and go that same distance and do less exercise, but certainly do more to endanger themselves and pedestrians. So not a fan, but if we are going to continue this pilot, we really need to be more aggressive in terms of looking at every element of safety. And I walk my dog every night, and I see probably 10 scooters that are lying in the sidewalk, in a driveway, someplace where they shouldn't be. And I usually pick a few of them up. I wish more people would, rather than saying, there's a scooter in a bad spot, take 10 seconds and pick it up. But aside from that, it is a danger. We need to address that also. I believe the technology is there, so we really need to make these companies make the best use of all the technology to put out a better product on the street and to track it and prevent some of the things that make them as dangerous as they are.
Anything else?
Nope.
Okay.
That is it.
Thank you. Thanks, Marcel, for the report. Hopefully we'll get more tech savvy in here in the future. Just a couple things. When you provide data about injuries or collisions, I'd like you to try to also compare the same metrics for the same period of time for bicycles and automobiles. In the past month, I know someone who was in a serious injury on a scooter. In the past month, I know somebody who was in a serious injury on a bicycle. In the past month, I know somebody who was in a serious injury automobile on automobile. And if we sort of look at the data individually, we can say, oh my God, this is horrible, when it might actually be no worse or better than an alternative mode. And I think it's important to look at that as we do this. So I've heard a couple things from the report. that LADOT is requesting an enabling ordinance be amended to authorize fines and permit suspension for company violations, such as poor 311 responsiveness. Because currently the only remedy is permit revocation, and we want something sort of in the Goldilocks spot between too soft and too hard. I also am getting the impression that while we told constituents that LAPD would have the resources to enforce the scooter laws, we don't exactly know what that is looking like, and we're going to need some clarity on that. The third thing I note, and you didn't really speak to it, but it's what I'm experiencing, is it's sort of the flip side of what some communities have. Some communities want more of these and aren't seeing enough of them. In Venice, these companies are dumping them on every freaking corner, and it's ridiculous. It's an absolute oversaturation. Clearly, the companies, all they're looking to do is make a buck, and they're not particularly concerned about there being any trade-off for them in exchange for that. And we need to come up with a way to deal with an overconcentration. Either we come up with high-intensity areas where there is a lower cap, or we come up with a significantly higher fee if you go over a certain cap in an area. Because if the companies can't actually behave themselves and pull back a little bit, there's going to be more than 2 council members who are going to be interested in seeing this thing go away. My feeling right now is that, this is mixed so far. There are benefits to this, and there are pluses to this. There are things that can be done to improve it, but I don't think any of the scooter companies, at least from what I'm seeing, are living up to the expectations that I hope they'd be at this point. And it's particularly frustrating that that's the case. I still see a lot of them that are not picked up, a lot of them where they shouldn't be, seeing a glut in certain neighborhoods. And it's particularly distressing to see that because everybody's trying to prove this works. So if these companies really want them to work, step up and do better, because we need this to work better. You need this to work better if you want to operate in the city of Los Angeles. And it's particularly galling that as this is happening, some of these companies are actually challenging Los Angeles' ability to have data, which is just, it's irresponsible. It's let's make a deal and let's pull out of the deal. If you don't want to provide the data, then get the hell out of Los Angeles, because that's what we need to protect our constituents, and that's what we need to enforce our rules. So I would like to recommend that we receive and file the LADOT report, that we request that the city attorney, in consultation with LADOT, draft an ordinance establishing a graduated penalty structure for enforcement of permit condition violations, that we direct LAPD and LADOT to report back in 90 days with a joint work program and funding request for public education and enforcement campaign and tracking of 311 requests, as Ms. Martinez asked for, and to direct LADOT to report back in, this says 90, I'm going to say in 60 days, with recommendations to address the oversaturation of devices in overconcentrated markets. Anything else? Nope. Okay, so that'll be the direction of the committee. My staff was not expecting me to get that hot on this issue. Okay, that brings us to item number, we have another dockless item, so we'll do that now. Item number 27.
Item 27 is a Correct-Cedillo motion instructing DOT to revise the rules and guidelines for the dockless on-demand personal mobility pilot to allow the city to deny, suspend, and/or revoke operating permits if a personal mobility company fails or refuses to cooperate with law enforcement investigations.
Thank you. We've got 5 public comment cards on this. Steve Boyers. Come on up, Steve. Zoila Banuelos, Robin Greenberg, and Carla Awinane, if you're still here.
Mr. Chairman, I have some printed material.
Yeah, you can share it with the Sergeant at Arms.
Shall I
Please, go
begin?
ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, council members. My name is Steve Boyers, and I'm here representing the Pacific Palisades Community Council. And we're here to support the Councilmember Koretz's proposal. After listening to a number of the other comments here this afternoon, I think that our proposal in support of Councilman Koretz's motion makes sense because there seems to be a need for greater accountability. If you look at item number 2 in my prepared material, it really simply states that a way around what I think are really false issues such as privacy is to require in the use agreement that the user signs with the company that he consents to law enforcement being contacted in the event the scooter he's operating is involved in either an accident or a commission of a crime. Item number 3 is for the city to insist that such a requirement.
Thanks, Steve. Sorry, we got to give the same amount of time for everybody.
Okay, that such a requirement be in the contract of any scooter company that does business with the city. That alleviates a lot of the problems and I think a lot of the false issues that are being raised. I want to make one additional point, and that is apparently AB 1286, if I have the correct number, in the State Assembly, has passed the Senate. That is a provision that leads me to believe that I have proposed something that is useful because in an attempt to ban exactly what I have been talking about. It is an attempt to say that the city, no municipality, can attempt to enforce through its contract negotiations with the scooter companies certain issues that they think are significant. I think the issue that we were first involved with arose out of what is essentially a vehicular a felony where an individual was hit, the scooter rider abandoned the scooter, and when the LAPD contacted that individual, the scooter company rather, they simply refused to disclose who had rented the scooter or any other information claiming it was an invasion of their customers' privacy. I think that really is not a legitimate issue. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Please go ahead, ma'am.
My name is Robin Greenberg. I'm president of the Bel Air Beverly Crest Neighborhood Council. We have a CIS on this issue, which, as I understand it, allows us perhaps a couple more minutes to talk. I want to first thank our councilperson, Paul Koretz, for everything that he does for our community. And I want to say hello to Mike Bonin and Noey Martinez, and thank you for your work. I just wanted to state also that when we saw Councilperson Koretz's motion on May 15th, 2019, in support of a stricter policy on these scooters, we jumped at it. We wrote a CIS on May 22nd, a few days after Paul Koretz's motion. We live and work in the hills representing the neighborhood council between the 405 freeway and Laurel Canyon. Believe it or not, we have the scooters in the hills. Can you think of anything more dangerous? We, members of the Bel Air Beverly Crest Neighborhood Council, actually would like to do away with the scooters also. We find them of absolutely no value. I have personally witnessed them being misused in all parts of the city. I drive around a lot in my occupation. I have seen children riding them on the Venice Boardwalk, 2 or 3 on one scooter with no helmets. When I have tried to tell them that that is not allowed, they laughed at me. I have heard that a neighborhood council person on our neighborhood council was driving on Crescent Heights at 35 to 40 miles an hour in her car, and a scooter was keeping up with her. We obviously have heard of the pastor in the Pacific Palisades who was hit by a scooter in a hit-and-run situation. And I also saw in the Daily Mail where a British tourist, age 18, faces $150,000 in medical bills when she was hit. She's from Northern Ireland. She was visiting her sister in Los Angeles, and she was thrown off of a scooter. I honestly, as I'm listening here today and thinking, cannot imagine why the city decided to give these scooter companies these contracts. We totally believe that the scooter companies are responsible. When I heard a lot of people talk before me and they talked about the scooter, the scooter, the scooter, it's not the scooter, it's a scooter company. And this city has really got to monitor the scooter companies. And they have to protect us, the individuals in our city. The last thing we need is to be afraid of a scooter coming at us while we're walking on the sidewalk in the neighborhood that we live in. That is unacceptable to us, and we totally concur with Paul Koretz's motion, and we hope to goodness that Paul Koretz is successful in his endeavors. Thank you so much.
Go ahead.
Hello again. First and foremost, I just want to affirm that Lime is committed to fully cooperating with law enforcement in the city and every other market that we serve. We, in fact, have a dedicated law enforcement landing page on our website with guidelines, as well as a link to a portal that allows law enforcement to communicate directly with our internal response team. We've also been proactively communicating with LAPD, and we're proud to announce that we have matched a State Farm grant which will enable the department to have a greater impact with their traffic safety campaign throughout the city. We're excited to continue growing the relationship with LAPD, and we'll continue to make safety and education our priority. That being said, we do have some concerns with the request to push for warrantless retrieval of information. The California Electronic Communications Privacy Act safeguards the request for information and highlights the necessary privacy protections of users in attempts for government overreach. We hope that the City Attorney and the Transportation Committee acknowledges the concerns here and recognizes a need for a subpoena or warrant in these investigations. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you all. Ms. Benuelos, I believe, has already left. That leaves Mr. Spindler. You only get 1 minute no matter how many times you fill out a comment card.
I thought if I fill out 9, I get 2 minutes. Okay, that's fine.
No, you're an asshole no matter.
So again, thank you to my allies in the Northern Territory of Beverly Crest. See, to get there, you go up to the mountain, and it's in the Jewish University in valet parking. Yes, they're right. And this is an example of how people of different colors, as myself as a black man living in Encino, can come together with our northern rich Jewish friends in the hills to oppose these fucking scooters. There's nothing we hate more than these fucking scooters, little scooters. Ding, ding. No, get them off our streets. Let's move forward, and let's ban them all right now. We have the votes. You have heard the truth. Again, the Beverly Crest Neighborhood Council never fails to surprise me. They are the greatest. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Koretz?
Yeah, so this motion, as has been mentioned, came out of an incident where a pedestrian was hit in a hit and run by a scooter, and the scooter company refused to provide immediate information to law enforcement. It's my belief that, as was outlined by a speaker earlier, that the terms and agreements that folks agree to on their app before they begin a scooter ride could include this fact that were there to be a case that their information could be provided to law enforcement, and with them signing off on that, I believe it absolutely would be legal for us to require that. I see no harm to the scooter companies, and I would be bringing forward this item, even if I absolutely love scooters and was the biggest advocate, because I think they absolutely have to be responsible, and you can't allow hit-and-run drivers to not be immediately pursued as they should be in these cases. So I would ask that for my colleagues' aye votes, and that we do not allow scooter companies to enable their patrons to commit crimes without their assistance in obtaining their identity and in pursuing them.
Thank you. Question for Mr. Nagel. I'm curious what authority we have now. I know that if somebody that does a hit and run in a rental car, LAPD can access rental agency records, I think only after obtaining a search warrant, and that's by state privacy law, yes?
Yes, it's Penal Code Section 1546.1. Law enforcement needs to obtain a warrant to obtain electronically stored information from a service provider. There are exceptions when there's an ongoing situation that presents a danger to the public or of serious physical injury or any person. Then LAP, under those circumstances, in good faith, could request that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a situation where somebody's knocking people over on the sidewalk,
Sure.
and they're still on the scooter, and that would possibly be a situation where, in good faith, they could ask for that. But the person who spoke for Lime is correct. It is required under the law that law enforcement obtain a warrant. But some of the things that she recommended were actually things that we could do, requiring that they have a portal to more quickly expedite the process, the warrant process. And we could work with them to determine, you know, the companies and with LAPD, the situations that where that information can be retrieved more quickly as part of an
So do we or do we not have the legal authority to simply compel them by virtue of a signature from a customer when they sign on that we get their information when we ask for it?
No, I think that would violate the Penal Code section. We'll look at it more closely, but under this law, it requires a warrant.
Okay. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, so I guess, so can we amend the contract for now? Or what can we do? Or is this something that we can look at during the pilot, and then once the program is fully implemented, it's something that we can include in the contract?
We'll look at it more closely from our end. I think we need to study this. We've just received this, and I don't want to provide advice that might be incorrect. We could eventually, yes, we could, if after looking at this, make any changes we want to the contract or the permits, because we have that authority.
So right now, what measures do companies have to inform the user that they must comply with local law enforcement in an event of a serious accident?
You know, I don't know if that's in their permit or not. I know that they're required to obviously obey all laws. I believe the rider actually can provide information to law enforcement. There's nothing. What we're talking about here is the company itself releasing information that's stored on their devices. That's something that would require a warrant. But the rider himself, if they're actually questioning a rider who's involved in an accident.
So how does DOT envision this playing out?
Salita Reynolds, LADOT. So if what we're talking about is can we, as a condition of the permit, which we are allowed to change at any time during the course of the pilot, that companies must push messages and information to riders that they are required to cooperate with law enforcement and to stay at the scene of a crash if a crash occurs. Right. That sounds like something that we could incorporate into the permit, and we'll have to talk with city attorney about whether or not that is an administrative change that the department can make without having to bring it back before council. As far as the individual company's record of cooperating with law enforcement after an incident has occurred, that's something that we would really need a little bit more advice from city attorney's office before we waded too deep. If what we're talking about is if a company does not comply with a warrant or another legal process or a subpoena that we could suspend or revoke their permit, that feels like something that we could also bring back before the council to discuss. But if we're talking about revoking permits when companies won't give information in the absence of a warrant or a legal process, I think that puts us in a much more complex situation from a state privacy statute sort of stance. Can we revoke permits because a company refuses to do something that would potentially violate current state law? I think that's a little trickier.
Particularly given the ongoing concerns that that we're dealing with over what are very simple and harmless privacy regulations that give us data to control.
Yeah, for what it's worth, our own privacy principles require that same level of legal process for us to release even the data that we get, which is a very small amount of data compared to the amount of data that the companies themselves have. So I think we would want to figure out what would make the most sense, because bottom line is, when somebody who is on a scooter violates the law and hurts somebody else, we want to hold them accountable the same way that we hold drivers accountable. And we have an entire program, the Medina alerts and all the other things that we do around hit and runs when it's a vehicle. And so figuring out what we want to do when that's not a vehicle, and if we want to apply those same things to these devices, which can go fast on sidewalks and can really injure people severely, that's another line of discussion and policy making that we could pursue as well.
Oh, yeah, we can't have a different privacy standard or due process for cars and motorcycles and stuff. What I might suggest, colleagues, is so we can move forward with the intent of the motion, but also be mindful of what sort of the legal parameters are, is instruct LADOT immediately to revise the rules and guidelines for the dockless on-demand mobility pilot to require the companies to create that law enforcement portal for the expedited processing of search warrant and law enforcement requests, and to designate a law enforcement liaison as a primary point of contact for LAPD officers conducting investigations, and for to change the permit to push out that sort of law enforcement compliance message that Ms. Reynolds was talking about. I think part of what we found, I mean, I've been aware of 2 incidents in my district. And then the third would be to ask city attorney and LADOT to report back on what further steps we could take to expedite getting the information we need for LAPD investigations, particularly for hit and run. What I've found in the couple incidents I'm aware of in my district is, I mean, there have been a couple where the person who got hit didn't stick around to actually file the police report. And then there are a couple where it wasn't that the companies were not complying with the information, is we just didn't know who to contact. I mean, I think at one point LAPD contacted my office and said, who do you contact? And so I think we need to get that portal down and that liaison down so that there's no confusion, and then streamline it.
And embed in LAPD and potentially LA Fire's reporting the company name of the scooter company involved.
Yeah.
As you were having the discussion earlier about safety, there are differences among companies on their safety records. Yeah. And the reporting right now comes to us in a very abstract way. If somebody takes the time, if somebody is injured severely enough to call for a paramedic, it comes through LA Fire. If somebody has property damage, maybe LAPD gets it. Otherwise, sometimes people are injured, they're just by themselves, they call an Uber or a Lyft, and they go to the hospital to avoid emergency charges. So there's a challenge there in the reporting, and that is something that the Vision Zero core team, which meets on a monthly basis, has taken up. Both what is our crisis response to scooter deaths and injuries. We've had 2 scooter deaths in the city since we launched the pilot. And what is the right reporting structure and information sharing so that we get all of the information that we need to bring forward best practices. And to Councilmember Koretz's point, as long as these are here under our watch, we have a responsibility to hold them accountable to make them as safe as possible.
So, all right, so that would be my recommendation. What do you think, Mr. Koretz?
I think that's probably as best as we can get, as long as the city attorney's office takes a deeper dive on the legality. Because I still have some questions about whether or not by consenting to it, the user could not be held responsible. It seems to me intuitively that would be logical. So if you could take a closer examination of that, and otherwise if we could implement every best practice that are currently being used by some of the companies to expedite reporting and identification, that would be great.
Great. Okay, without objection, that'll be the direction of the committee. And that leaves us with items 22, 23, 24. We're going to do 22 and 23 together.
Okay. Item 22 is the City Planning Commission and DOT reports relative to an update of the transportation section of Sequa Thresholds Guide to comply with California Senate Bill 743 and aligning with the updates to State Sequa Guidelines Section 15064.3 and 15064.7B and Appendix G. Consideration of recommendation to join other cities in Los Angeles County to be exempted from the congestion management program. And item 23 is a DOT report relative to the status of proposed update of the city's transportation demand management ordinance requirements for new developments.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to try to hear 22 and 23 together since they're somewhat related. We'll wait a second as people clear out of the room to get a little bit quieter. And Mr. Bertoni, please do not think for a second the fact that Tricia Keene made me sit through hours and hours of exhausting planning meetings when she was on my staff has anything to do with the fact that I made you wait through this entire meeting.
Nothing to do with...
It's only fair. It's only fair.
Okay, so we can do the discussion of 22 and 23 together since they're related.
Would you like us to begin or wait? Are you good? We're good?
No, go ahead.
Okay, great. So I'll start, and then we'll turn it over to my colleague, Director of Planning, Vince Bertoni. So California has unquestionably one of the strongest environmental acts in the country and has for several decades. But the problem with the transportation analysis section, which has not changed significantly in many decades, is that instead of getting us the kinds of programs and outcomes that will reduce people's reliance on driving, instead, the way that we evaluate new development in particular rewards development that happens in the suburbs or the outer parts of the city with very few mitigations and very low barriers to entry, and punishes higher density development, particularly near transit in the densest parts of the city, with really expensive, extensive mitigation measures. In short, the way that we have disclosed the impact of new development is exclusively through a lens of trying to create wide, fast streets to reduce driver delay. The problem with that, particularly in a built-out city like Los Angeles, is that we've run out of rope. And we no longer have the ability to widen roads, to create broad thoroughfares, and even to narrow sidewalks or to take property to do it, which puts this council in the position of repeatedly having to make findings of overriding consideration and let developers off the hook from making mitigation measures that work. Several years ago, the California state legislature changed the rules around the way that we evaluate new development. And the Office of Planning and Research challenged cities to come up with new ways to disclose the impacts of development that instead would reward development that reduces reliance on driving your own personal car, and instead challenges developments that have extensive vehicle trips to lower the number of trips to and from their development. That accomplishes for the city of Los Angeles three things. First, it opens up the tools of mitigation measures that we can now request of developers and changes them from voluntary to required. So whereas up until now, things that neighborhoods were requesting like expanding transit passes or creating car share programs or improving conditions for walking and cycling were voluntary. And so the best developers who wanted to work with neighborhoods would agree to do those things. This change allows us to make sure every developer has to reach into that same toolbox of mitigations that improve options for people to get around and reduce vehicle miles traveled. The second thing it allows us to do is to hold developments accountable for their results. So the creation of mitigation monitoring programs allows us to come back, measure the true results and outcomes of these developments, and require developers to come back and continue to work with us until they reach the number of, until they lower their number of vehicle miles traveled to where we want them to be. And finally, it will allow the council to have a much wider toolbox and a much more creative toolbox to really bring developers to the table to build the kinds of improvements that are consistent with all of the policy guidance that you've given us over the last several years, including the mobility plan, and now, as it'll come before you in a few months, the TDM ordinance that will sort of give us a whole range of choices. So from the department's perspective, the Office of Planning and Research has told us that, we have to move in this direction. But it's something that we've wanted to do for a while. Cities around California and the nation that have had thresholds and analysis measures like this have long been leaders in this arena. And it's our chance to catch up with them and to really provide something that works well for the kind of development we're seeing in the city of LA.
Let me I want to just hit on a couple things there before I go to Vince, because this is kind of a wonky thing, and it's sort of dense. Not even sort of.
I didn't say LOS once. I worked really hard to avoid that.
I bet Vince isn't going to be able to have the same ability, I'm sure. I think what this boils down to is that I think what most of us know, we certainly experience it on the west side, is the way that we do planning and traffic mitigation is just broken. I mean, it just doesn't work. I mean, the way I think we feel and our constituents feel is that a project comes in and we use these formulas to determine what the traffic impacts will be and how to mitigate them, and the formulas are old and antiquated and don't reflect the reality. And I think everybody going into the process tends to think that. And then we have a limited toolbox to try to fix it. And ultimately, nobody believes in the system. And the problem seems to keep getting worse. And the state is now mandating we do something different. And we either do nothing and do exactly as the state said, or we have the ability to refine it more to Los Angeles within those parameters. And we have the ability to do it in a way that actually makes the situation better, that prioritizes reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And I think, Salita, you hit on the most important thing, is the accountability. I mean, I think the thing that has driven me nuts over the years is that we say, okay, you have to do this to reduce traffic, and if it doesn't reduce or mitigate traffic, it's like, oh, well, too bad, and everybody's screwed. And this now gives us the ability to go back and force folks to do stuff. And I think that is a huge win. And I think you also hit on why it's hugely pro-neighborhood. In addition to being pro-mobility, it gives the neighborhood, as you said, a greater range of tools to do things that are better. So that is
Thank you.
Is that a correct, more plain-spoken understanding?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Actually, I think...
Come on, throw out some acronyms.
Well, no, I avoid them actually at all costs, and I think the General Manager Reynolds did a great job of really giving you an overview, so I'm going to be a bit brief just to say that just to echo what she said, but to say that a few things to keep in mind, as you mentioned. This is not, we think that it really follows what all of our goals have been, and the issue that we've had is we've known, we know what our goals have been, but our analysis hasn't really been able to give us the outcomes that to get to our goals, right? And so the thing that I would say that's really important to keep in mind with this is that this supports both land use and transportation together. It's not just that we're not getting the right types of mobility improvements, it's that we're also not, it makes it more difficult for us to get the right kind of development projects. Because sometimes the traffic analysis really drives how the projects are designed. So I think that those two both work together, and I really don't have anything else to add except to be available to answer any questions.
Okay. Just one question, Vince. You've been through this before?
when you were head of planning in Pasadena, which was an early adopter of VMT. Just, what have you taken away from that experience, things that we can learn from?
It's we actually went to from level of service to vehicle mile, something similar to what we're doing in vehicle miles traveled in Pasadena. And we did it. We're the first in the state, and we believe first in the nation to do that. So we're the first one to really fully to transfer over to that. And we did it because we could see that all of our mitigation measures on development projects, we weren't getting the right mitigation measures that really followed what our plans were. And so that's why we moved over. I would say that what we found is the fact that we didn't necessarily get rid of all the other tools. Remember, we're going from level of service to vehicle miles traveled just for the purposes of evaluating projects under the California Environmental Quality Act. And also I would say that this doesn't change whether a project is subject to the California Environmental Quality Act or not. It just is once it is subject to it, this is how we evaluate the project and we do the analysis. So one of the things that we found is as we were implementing it, that we were able to do a much better job of actually getting those types of improvements that we weren't able to get before, such as dealing with signal timing, mid-block crossings, and so forth. And the other thing that we found is that a lot of projects, what happened was, and this is the part where the analysis sometimes, the analytical tool kind of drives what your project looks like. When projects were tripping major impacts, what happened was instead of putting out there mitigation measures that weren't feasible or adopting a statement of overriding considerations, thereby not actually getting the improvement, what they did is they actually they redesigned their projects to make them much more community friendly and just really change the uses to make sure that people don't have to get in their cars and drive as much. So actually what it did is it didn't just drive what the improvements looked like, it actually drove better projects.
Questions, colleagues? Go for it.
Is a Sequa analysis necessary for this? And if so, is it in the process?
No, this is actually changing the Sequa threshold.
He's asking, do we need to do a Sequa analysis to change our impact thresholds?
That's what I know.
Right.
And the answer is no. Because this is actually this is actually mandated by the state law, so it doesn't require the Sequa analysis.
Okay.
Anything else?
Not at this moment.
Okay. And anything you want to add? We have another committee meeting that's supposed to start 10 minutes ago. Anything you want to say briefly about the TDM?
I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. Sorry. Kathy Phelan, City Attorney's Office. I just wanted to note that there were some technical corrections added into your council file. And when you make your action, if you could add those technical corrections into the record and into your action, that would be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
The only thing I want to add is that this has been a long time coming and several years of work and outreach, and I just want to recognize staff from Department of Transportation and Department of City Planning and Fair and Peers, many of whom are the last remaining audience members for this very long agenda, because even though it is incredibly wonky, it is something that many of us in transportation have cared passionately about getting done, and it has taken, state action and years of work to get to this point, and so I just want to thank them for wading through dense technical topics that actually are going to be major levers for decades to come to get much better projects and outcomes for Angelenos.
They look like they like that kind of stuff.
They do.
And just one note on the TDM stuff, because it was solid stuff, all good, is I think what's particularly promising about that is that Metro is doing the same work at the same time, so we're going to be able to dovetail that, which would be very good. Mr. Kretz?
Yeah, this has been a long and slow process, and I know it's been over a year since the council gave its most recent instruction on this. When do we actually expect to see a draft TDM ordinance coming back?
Arthi Varma, Department of City Planning. We are actively working on that TDM ordinance and hope to release a draft late summer.
Late summer being when?
September.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. And I noticed since we started, there's another comment card. Barbara, did you have Barbara still here?
Yes.
participated in some of the open house meetings, I couldn't contain myself to say that one of the reasons that we were not getting the mitigations we wanted or needed over time historically is because of the nature of the process of EIR creation and the fact that we have never fairly evaluated traffic impacts. And when you allow 800,000 square foot office buildings to say that they're generating no new significant traffic and certify an EIR that does that, then of course you're not getting the mitigations you need, and of course the city's congestion gets worse. So there is a feedback mechanism, and we have to be sure that the few times now that we're allowed to do Sequa, that it's done in the manner it was meant to be done, to identify impacts and seek mitigations.
Thank you. Okay, so we will approve as amended in the council file items 22 and 23. And then we have one last item, which will be very brief, which is item 24.
Item 24 is a DOT report relative to the feasibility of implementing potential mitigations presented in the Kimley-Horn, May 2018 Rowena Avenue, Waverly Drive, Angus Street cut-through traffic study report.
So there are no public comment cards on this, and we have another committee that really needs to start. Let me just say that I recommend we approve recommendations 1 and 2 included in the LA DOT report. 2, instruct LA DOT to assess the feasibility of making additional safety and traffic circulation enhancements to the project area, including but not limited to A, upgrading the existing striped bike lane to accommodate a wider Class 2 buffered bike lane or Class 4 separated bikeway to provide additional safety to people bicycling. B, extending the eastbound bike lane on Rowena Avenue to Hyperion. C, consideration of alternative striping options to mitigate traffic congestion and confusion for eastbound drivers at Glendale and Rowena. And 3, instruct the Bureau of Street Lighting with the assistance of LA DOT to assess the feasibility and identify funding for the installation and or upgrade of pedestrian scaled lighting on Rowena Avenue between Silver Lake Drive and Hyperion Avenue. Anything else? Okay. Any questions, comments? Okay. So that will be the direction of the committee, and that will wrap up our agenda, and we are adjourned. Thank you.